Hello everyone, I'm Kat from the Littlestown Library of the Adams County Library System, and welcome to today's Tiny Art for Adults and Teens. Today we are going to be painting a grateful autumn. So that is the painting we're going to do today. So if you signed up for an art kit, then you will receive the following. You'll get a 4x4 blank canvas, a tiny easel, one paintbrush, and then 6 paint pots with the following colors: brown, yellow, orange, red, white, and blue. So that is what you'll get if you signed up for an art kit. I also highly recommend that if you have a paper plate or plastic lid that doesn't go to anything or something like that, that you get that out to use to mix your colors. This particular piece does require, or at least benefits from being able to mix colors ahead of time. So I'm giving you the basics, but it will be helpful if you can mix your own. So that comes in handy. You'll also need something, a container, a cup of some kind to put water in, so that way you can clean your brush. And you'll also need a paper towel to put down to make sure that you don't get paint everywhere, and then another paper towel or two to clean your brush between takes as well. So without further ado, let's get painting. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is take our brown, and we are first going to establish a base, more or less. There we go. Again, about the width of your brush, just to kind of establish where that is. And then we want also to rough out an idea of where your pumpkin is going to be. If you want to have a small pumpkin, you can do the whole thing right there. If you want to indicate that it's a larger pumpkin, then you might just want half of it. We want to leave a little bit of space over here for the mug. So if you want kind of, we'll just go ahead and just do sort of an oval shape, just to kind of rough out where the pumpkin is, because pumpkin is a bit more like that. So that's kind of gives you an idea of where your pumpkin is going to be. So, and then you just want to kind of do a bunch of splotches up here of brown, and it's okay if you see the wow, this thing's just rocking all over the place. If it's okay if you see like the strokes. That's totally fine, because this is where the background, where the impressionistic leaves are going to be. So that is totally fine. And you want to go to about here with that, about there with that. And then we also want to have some darker brown down up there, and then down in the corners. So you want to take a little bit of brown and a little bit of blue, because that will give you a darker brown. And you want to mix that up. And you see how that gives you a darker brown, so you just want to kind of put that up there. If you need a little bit more blue to make it a little bit darker, you can do that. Just be careful how much blue you put in there, because we still want it to be recognizably brown. It just needs to be a little bit darker up there, and also down along here, because this is where the table's gonna be, where the pumpkin and everything is sitting. So you want to do that across with the darker the darker, you can see it's on there. Like if you wanted to, you know, buy a separate, you know, brown, darker brown, you could do that, but we're just basically making it with the blue to make it darker. And then up there, okay? And again, if you have a canvas with edges, then you'll want to go ahead, whoops, sorry, I'm getting in my light there. Then you'll want to make sure that you get the edges as well. Okay, then you want to clean your brush, and now we're going to get some white. And again, if you have a palette, that will make this easier, but white and then a little bit of blue to make a really light bluish color. And it's okay if you get, if you still have brown on your brush, because that will give it a little bit more texture. So then we want to just, you might not be able to see it very well, but it does have a very light, almost blue-gray look to it. So you'll want to put that over here again and sort of back and forth. Big, and you can see it's right there on here. So just back and forth and back and forth. And then you want to start blending it in with the brown. If you need to, you can wipe off your brush and just get some more white and blue. Kind of get that merging together of the two. I want to clean my brush and get off all that excess weirdness. And get a bunch of white and blue, and just kind of and again, remember to get your edges. So if you have edges of canvas, make sure you get that. So it's all very kind of wishy-washy, kind of impressionistic. Get a little bit more brown in here. And a little more brown. And we just just to kind of merge the two together. Whoop, I'm kind of losing a little bit of my dark. Whoa, that was a little too much blue. Mix. Oh, too much white. Sometimes you have to clean your brush a little bit more in between takes, and I did not do that as well. But again, this is all just in the background, so it's totally okay. If it doesn't turn out exactly, you know, the way you wanted it to, that's totally fine, because we can always paint over it once it's dry. If you end up not liking how it turned out, that's none of this is set in stone. This is really, really forgiving, really impressionistic, and you can just do whatever, literally whatever it is that you think looks good. So yeah, you don't need to worry if it doesn't look exactly the way you want it. You can just go right over it, which I've got a little bit too much paint, I think. Whoops. I'm trying to mix it, so okay, Okay, so that kind of gives you your more impressionistic background, and then down here I'm going to firm this up a bit with brown and blue, with the brown and the dark blue in order to make the darker brown for the table, so that way this is very firm and sharp. And if you want to make it look more like wood grain, you can do streaks of the lighter brown in there. And even if you want a little white, you could do a little white to give it sort of a streaky look. Just make sure that this line right along here is nice and sharp. So that shows where the boundary is between the table and the atmosphere, the sky there, because we're going to need that. Whoop. Get my side here. Alrighty, so now that we've got that, we're going to do some more impressionistic blending up here to indicate the leaves. So we're going to take some red and some orange and mix that together on our palette to get sort of a red-orange color. The more red you have, the darker it's going to look, and the more orange you have, then the lighter it's going to look. So I've kind of got a red-orange kind of here, and just sort of a couple spots that are a darker red, a couple spots that are a lighter orange. Add a little bit of red and brown to kind of go back here. So yeah, everything's going to kind of blend and mix together, and that is totally okay. Because again, we're just trying to give sort of this impression of autumn, this impression of autumn leaves in the background. You can even bring some down here a little bit if you'd like. Some of this is going to get covered up by the, by the pumpkin itself. But again, you can just general furpiness, some orange, and throw in a little yellow here and there, just to that impression. And now I'm going to clean my brush and wipe that off and add a little bit of the blue-white here to sort of blend it, so that way it's not just this stark line. We want everything all kind of blending and merging together. Bit of white on there. Oops. I want some red and some orange. Ooh, look at that. That's a nice bright red-orange there. There we go. And again, make sure you get your sides. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and let that dry then. You can see it's very impressionistic, very just little bits that suggest leaves here and there. We'll be doing a little bit more with that later. But again, this is just to give just a couple of dabs of yellow mixed in. But this is just to give the impression of the autumn colors in the background without actually having to go through and do each and every individual leaf, because that would be ridiculously time consuming, and there are painting tutorials that do that if you want to do something like that. But I do not have the patience for that, nor do I have the talent, so we're just gonna leave it like that. So go ahead, and depending on how many layers you've got, you may have it might take a little bit for this to dry, so I'd say give it 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll be back for the next bit, which will be doing the actual pumpkin. Okay, so now that we're dry, or mostly dry, now it's time to make our pumpkin. I know we kind of have a rough idea of where it is, although mine kind of looks like an egg, but you know, hey, that's how it sometimes rolls. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take just my straight up orange as kind of sort of the mid-range color, and I'm gonna go ahead and fill in the white, and then if I need to extend it out, like make this a little better here, then I can do that as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and fill in the white wherever it is that I have my pumpkin. And it's okay if the pumpkin isn't like perfectly shaped, because pumpkins, since they're gourds, they come in all different shapes and sizes. There's some pretty weird looking pumpkins out there, so it is totally okay if it's a slightly odd shaped pumpkin. So I'm gonna extend mine out a bit to go along here, because I don't feel like I have a proper shape for my pumpkin. And it's okay, you can see that because I have the darker background, it doesn't look quite right, but that's okay, because we're going to be going over this with a red-orange along the outline there. So now that we've got our mid-tone in, I'm going to take some orange and some red and mix that together on my palette, because that just makes it easier. So now you can see I have kind of a red-orange. You might be able to see, I don't know. There's a lot of orange in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that along the outside edge of my pumpkin. And this might take a few layers, depending on how dark the background was. And that's totally okay. Like, this is totally fine. It's just that we might have to wait until a section is dry before we go back over it in order to finish it. So you can see that's a slightly darker orange, and I'm actually going to go ahead over on the inside there. And then I'm going to take some straight up red and kind of do that along the outside edge, and you can see that that's blending with the orange. Alrighty. There we go. And it's totally okay that it's kind of dark down here, because again, since that's the lower portion of my pumpkin, that's fine. If you hear some rustling around, that's my cat Diego hiding behind the curtain and making noise, because that's what he does. Isn't that right, baby? So go ahead and just do that. And whoop, a little bit on the side there. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to take a little bit of brown and mix in the red-orange, so it's a little bit darker. So I've got red, orange, and brown, and I'm gonna take that along the bottom here and just kind of give that a little bit of over there, because since our light source is kind of coming this way, we're going to have, if there's any like brighter parts, they're going to be kind of more on this side, and then the shade, any shadows are going to be more on this side. So now we're going to give the more lumpy Diego. Yeah, a lumpy Diego. That's exactly what we're doing. Diego, you need to hop down. There we go. Okay. So now we are going to give that kind of gourd, those lines that the pumpkins have. Actually, first I'm going to make a little bit more red orange. And I'm actually gonna make this a little less eggy. There we go, a little less eggy. Now we're getting more of a pumpkin. There we go. Yeah, we're getting a little more pumpkin-y. There we go. Okay, cool. All right, a little bit more like a pumpkin. Alrighty, so now I'm going to take the red and the orange, make that kind of dark. So a little bit more red and a little bit of brown and a teeny tiny dab of blue. Because blue makes better shadows than black. Black's a little bit too stark. So wherever the stem is going to be coming up here somewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a curve. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just a curve right along there, and then another curve right along there. And now I'm gonna get a little bit more of the paint, a little more of the red orange, dab of brown, dab of blue. Oh, that might have been a little bit too much blue. A little more red and orange. So I've got this kind of darkish color. And we're gonna do another, whoa. I'm trying to just use the edge of my brush to get these curves. But sometimes that might be a little bit difficult. And then we're gonna do another one right along here. Go. All right, so we got a little bit more of our pumpkin curves there. Okay, I know it looks really weird right now, but it will get better, I promise. This is one of those paintings that builds up with a lot of layers. So now we're going to take orange and still a little bit of red, but a little bit less than what we had. So it'll still be a kind of a red orange, but it won't be quite as dark. And then we're gonna kind of go in here like this. And then we're going to do a layer of just regular orange, no mixing. can hopefully tell that we're building up our layers a bit. Again, some of this we might need to just kind of dab on there. Take a little bit of yellow and orange, mostly orange, but a little bit of yellow, so it's even lighter, and then just see, we're kind of going in between. There we go. Like I said, some of these we may need to let dry before we really, because you can see down below, because it has such a dark underpinning, it's having a little bit of trouble, and some parts of the top there, it's having a little bit of trouble taking the paint. So I'm just gonna do a little bit more there, and then I'm gonna let it dry, and then we're gonna go ahead back and start doing some more layering, especially down the bottom. And but you can see it looks a little bit more like an actual pumpkin now, which is nice. And actually this kind of looks a little bit like a shadow right there. So some of this we might leave because of the because there is going to be the mug and everything, but it's looking real good. So we're going to go ahead and let that dry. There's a lot of layers, so I'd let it dry for at least 5 minutes, possibly 10, again depending on how heavy your paint is, and then we will get back to some more layering. It's a lot of layers in this, just because the more layers you build up, the more three-dimensional it is, the more shades and shadows you get, because that's how you make things look three-dimensional. Everything with light is, from the light source, the light's coming this way, so you have highlights and brighter spots up here, and then you'd have more shadows and darker parts over here. It just depends all on where the light's hitting. If you're having the light coming, like straight on here, then you'd have like darker top, darker down the bottom. If the light was shining up from underneath, then you would have the highlights and the brightness down here, and you'd have more shadows in the back. So it all depends on where you want your light to be coming from. If you just picture like a little lamp, I'm just gonna picture this is the lamp and the light is shining upon it. So all of the rays are like a little sun. So just as long as you're consistent and you remember where you put that imaginary lamp. Something like this might be easier if you have an actual physical object to set down and actually have light shining on it, but we're doing without. So we'll go ahead and let that dry, and then we'll go ahead and do some more layers. Okay, so now that our pumpkin has had a chance to dry, we're gonna go ahead and take some orange, just some regular orange, and dab that on here with a little bit of red. I mean, this is all it's all very ish. Like, this is a very impressionistic painting, so it's totally fine to have things not quite, look as fully realistic as they might otherwise, be, simply because, that's just how this goes. This is a very, very impressionistic kind of pumpkin here, and I'm gonna add a little bit of, whoa, that's a little bit too much red. there. A little more red orange. I'm trying to keep the red orange like on the edge of my brush, but sometimes it doesn't work as well as we might like, and that's, you know, that's okay, you know. We've got a little bit of a depression there. We've got the edge of our pumpkin. Okay, I'm gonna rinse off, dry off my brush. And we're going to mix a little bit of yellow and a little bit of orange to get kind of a yellow-orange, and just sort of get that on there in a few places. And we may have to do the dabby dab like we did before, because this one section just really doesn't want to hold the paint for some reason. And yeah, there we go. We just kind of want to do a little orange and a little yellow, and just, yeah, there we go. So we kind of have our little streaky pumpkin. And it's okay if you go over like the bands a little bit to try to make it a little bit less sharp, because this is all, again, very you know, it's a you know, kind of a style here. And there we go, got a little bit of shadow down there, and yellow kind of up there, brightness. Don't know why that one section is just not, it just doesn't want to hold the color for some reason. Get a little more orange in there. Put a little bit of, gotta sharpen that up a little bit more, so there's still a little bit of definition there. A little bit more red. Alrighty, well, we're looking a little bit more pumpkin-y. I'm gonna throw some yellow highlights up in here. A little bit more yellow. Again, you kind of want the, nope. Whoa! Lost my light there. Thank you, kitties. Okay, so we want some yellow here. That's what happens when you're trying to do painting with a bunch of cats in the house. So we'll do some yellow, kind of yellow highlighting here. And again, it's okay that there's a bit more yellow on, you know, up here on the side, because that's where our light is coming from. Far there. Need to put some of our red orange back up there. More red. And if we want to have a little bit of brown to darken it up. A little bit of brown down here. There we go. That's looking a little bit more like a round pumpkin. And we'll get a little bit of white, just a tiny dab of white to just streak on there. Little bit of yellow. Yeah, like I said, it's just kind of again, this is a little bit easier when you have an actual pumpkin that you're looking at, but we don't have an actual pumpkin. We are totally winging it here, and that is totally fine. So you see there's some sharper streaks. Some streaks to help with the pumpkin to look a little bit more like a three-dimensional object. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to put just a little bit more. Whoop, got a hair there. A little bit more of a highlight here. I'm just trying not to have too many like goops and gobs of paint of any one color, which obviously sometimes can get a little bit difficult, but we're trying. There we go. Alrighty, and I'm going to bottom there a little bit. Okay, so our pumpkin is more or less complete. We're gonna go ahead and put our stem on, which again, our stem is gonna be kind of right here. And you can have, I'm gonna mix a little bit of blue and brown to make our stem. So that way it stands out a little bit better. It'll be nice and dark. So some blue, some brown, and I'm just making a very basic stem here. Nothing too special. You can make one that's you know, a little bit more impressive if you want, but I'm just doing a very basic stem here. I'm actually going to add a little bit more blue because it is not, you see how it's kind of like, it's not really, it's sticking out a little bit from the background, but not a whole lot. And I kind of want that to stand out as a darker color. So I'm just kind of twirling my brush around in it and then dabbing it. Ooh, there we are. Oh, that's a little bit too blue. But that's okay. It's okay if it's a little bit too blue at the moment because I can add some other. There we go. It's a nice dark there. Woohoo! And actually, that reminds me, I'm going to put a little bit more shadow back here with a similar dark. Just kind of make that nice and dark. There, so that way you get a little bit of a shadow of the pumpkin. There we go. Woohoo! That was very loud. Sorry about that, folks. Sorry about that. I'll have to cut some of that out. So, okay, so there's a little bit of reflection from the darker stuff down on the bottom, but that will, as that dries, then it won't be as bad. Yeah, it looks a little dark right now. So there's a couple like bright spots that's just from that. So I'm going to actually, I'm gonna mix a little bit of red, brown, and blue. Oh, I have some stringy stuff. That's one thing you gotta watch out, especially if you like pets and stuff, but also sometimes brushes, their bristles will shed, and so sometimes that will leave residue. And whoops, that looks kind of horrible. It's trying to darken up the where the back line of the pumpkin is, and it didn't work. Actually, now it's kind of working a bit. Like I added a little bit of red and brown, and I kind of tried to darken up where the edge is. So that way the edge of the pumpkin is a little bit more distinct. So it's not just this sort of random, you know, so that way that you can still, that way you can see the edge of the pumpkin. And I'm just gonna fudge that up a little bit. There we go. So that way you can see the edge of the pumpkin a little bit better in the back. And now we're going to add to the stem, add some brown, because the stem is wood, so you want to have a little bit of a streak to it. And make sure if you have a highlight or anything, I'm going to take a teeny tiny bit of white and streak it there, so that way you see there's the some more of the highlight from the light source shining onto the pumpkin. We have a very shiny stem apparently, and that is totally okay. It's totally fine. Might be able to put a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to take a little bit of brown, a little bit of brown, a little bit of blue, teeny tiny bit of red. A lot of this is just mixing a bunch of like little tiny bits. And just seeing how it there we go. And just seeing how it looks. I wanted to have, since again the light's coming from this way, I wanted a little bit of a shadow from the stem. And it's not perfect, it's not great. Again, this is something that's a little bit easier to do on a larger canvas, but we do not have a larger canvas in this instance. So we are making do with what we have. But I think that looks really nice. And so we're going to leave our pumpkin alone, and we are going to work on our mug that is over here. Now this we're just going to need plain white for. We will not need any other colors at this time. So make sure you clean off your brush really well. And then we're going to do a mug. Now you can do any kind of mug, like any shape, any shape of mug that you want. You could do a tall mug, you could do a low mug, you could do any kind of mug. I'm gonna kind of do, you do want it to overlap. I mean, you could have it separately, but it'd be kind of nice if you could overlap it a little bit with the pumpkin, which actually I guess I could have made my pumpkin a little bit bigger, but I didn't, but that's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start off with this shape from my mug. Getting just some white and just doing a kind of basic mug shape. And just with plain white. It might be a little bit hard to see where the handle of the mug is over here, because it is such a very, very light blue. Like you probably can barely see it on the camera. But it is because we mix that white and very little bit of blue to give us kind of a light blue color. So don't be surprised if you can't really tell where those two end. It's not surprising. So let me go ahead and actually make my handle right here. Just a generic cup handle. Nothing special. Just, you know, just a mug. Just a mug. There we go. So I have my mug. I either have a very large mug or a very tiny pumpkin. I guess it could go either way, and that's totally fine. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to let this, I don't know if we should let this dry yet. Actually, you know, we're not going to let this dry yet. We are going to go ahead because we're going to need to do a little bit of blending. So we're going to get a tiny bit of blue and a little bit of white, just like we did before when we were doing this part. We're going to do similar. Okay, we're going to do similar, and we're going to do a little bit of shadow crossed in here, and a little bit down here. Because the light again is coming from this side, so, and we'll do a little bit there. Okay. That might look a little bit runny to you because I had a little bit of water on my brush. And I'm gonna get a tiny bit of brown. I'm gonna go across here because this is where the pumpkin spice or hot chocolate or whatever, apple cider, whatever beverage of choice is gonna be in here. So I'm just kind of delineating where that's gonna be. And again, it's not gonna be perfect because I'm not good at man-made things. Those are kind of a pain. So we're gonna go ahead now and do a teeny bit of brown here. And we're gonna let that dry for about 5-10 minutes. And then we will continue delineating and shaping the mug and the rest of that. So we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so now that we are pretty much dry, I'm going to have a little bit of that darker brown blue mix to create shadow. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some of that right along here. Of course, getting it on the mug, of course. But just to indicate that there is, in fact, a shadow there. Again, coming from the far side, so. All right, I need to clean that off. And then I can take some of the blue white and there we go, fixed it. Okay, cool. There we go. Alrighty. So you see there's a little bit of some shadowing. Again, some of the blue white is just to give a little bit of three-dimensionality to the cup. When we're going to add a tiny bit more of that to the inside of the handle right here, just to indicate that this is, there we go. So you can see it's just a little bit of the darker like blue white right there, just to indicate, which again is just a little bit of blue and a little bit of white mixed together in order to create that kind of contrast there. And I'm gonna do a tiny bit up here too. And some right along the lip of the cup as well. So again, this is just to give it just that little bit, just a little bit of shadow, a little bit of shading, just enough to give it that three-dimensionality, so it doesn't look quite so flat. So it looks like it belongs in the space, just like the pumpkin does. And I'm gonna now take just some regular plain old white, and I'm gonna darken, brighten this up a bit, make the white a little bit more white, and do a little bit more touch up down here, trying to make that edge. I'm trying to make that edge at the bottom look a little bit less ragged, which is difficult when you have a ragged brush, but I'm trying. And then a little bit of the blue and white. Mixing into, and again, if there's anything that you're like, oh wait, that's a little too much, that's a little too little, whatever, you can always go back over it and paint over it, and it's fine. So yeah, that's basically how you do that. Alrighty, and now I'm gonna get some brown, just some regular brown, and I'm gonna put some on the edge of my brush. And I'm going to put it right in here. Because that is where the liquid is. There we go. Okay. now we're gonna add the cinnamon or cinnamon sticks, chocolate sticks, whatever they are. Some people say it's one thing, some people say it's another, but we're gonna go ahead and add those. So we're gonna take some brown and a little blue just to make it a little darker, just to make it a slightly darker brown. And we're gonna do one kind of up like that, and the other oh, that doesn't look good. That one doesn't work. That one doesn't work. Okay. Well, okay, well we got one. We got one that works nice. We got one that works fine. So I'm just gonna have to, I have a little bit of water on my brush and I'm just wiping that away. Ta-da! Okay, now I'm gonna make my brush completely dry. Okay, so we've got one cinnamon stick in there. Okay, so now I'm gonna get blue and brown again. I'm just gonna make this a little bit thicker. And a little bit more blue and brown. I'm just doing teeny tiny bits of paint at a time, which this is what my paint palette has been looking like. So yeah, it's a mess. So this is why a palette of some kind is extremely helpful, because it's easier for you to kind of mix things and see sort of what it looks like. So okay, so there's one and then there's the other. And they're a little bit darker than the liquid itself. So now I'm gonna go back with the brown and go over that. And brown and blue. And I'm gonna pull these down into the liquid. It's not going to look perfect, but hey, they're dissolving. It's fine. It is totally fine. I'm going to try to make the ends a little bit rounder so they look more like cinnamon sticks or whatever. There we go. And I'm going to get teeny tiny bit of yellow streaked in there. And a little bit of the regular brown. There we go. So that doesn't look too bad. Woohoo! There we go. Okay, so those are our cinnamon sticks or our chocolate sticks or whatever in our cup of cider. And now we're going to add a few final touches. There's going to be a couple leaves just kind of blowing past to sort of indicate that this is, in fact, you know, leaves or whatever in the background. So I'm going to get some more brown and a dab of blue to make it a dark brown. Brown and a dab blue to make the dark brown. And then we're just gonna, and these don't have to be any kind of leaf in particular, they're just kind of a general, just sort of kind of like that. stars. They're kind of a triangle-ish shape. They kind of look like duck feet. That's what it sort of looks like, is it sort of looks like duck feet. You know, or dinosaur feet or something is kind of what they look like when you're doing the shape. I'm actually gonna stretch this one stem out a little bit more. Again, this would be easier with a finer brush, but I don't have a finer brush, but these will do. Okay, because again, it's just a general impression kind of thing. And then we want some red. Just kind of dabbed on there. Some red. Get a dab of orange. And this is where we'll actually have some brighter yellow. It's melding a little bit more than I'd like, so I'm gonna go ahead back in and touch up. With just some dabs of the straight up color. So it looks like some leaves just floating on by. Okay. There we go. That doesn't look too bad. And if you decide you don't want the leaves, if you think that they don't add anything to it, then you can always get rid of them. That's not, you know, that's not a problem. You can totally do that. Or if you're looking at this and going, yeah, I don't think I want leaves, then that's totally legitimate. You do not have to. But it can also add to the piece so it looks a little bit more like there's you know, like there's something more going on. A little bit. I'm just trying to keep the leaves a little bit sharper so that way they stand out a little bit better. There we go. Alrighty, and then for the final touch, we're going to get some white on your brush, and then you'll actually want to kind of wipe it on your paper towel, and then we're gonna go like that. And we'll do it again. If you want to make it, you know, so you could use like the side of your brush like that if you want. Or if you want to use, if you want to turn your brush like this. Then you can do that. That one didn't turn out quite as well as I would have liked, but that's okay. So there you go. There is a grateful autumn scene all done there. And again, if there's any other touch-ups you want to do, you can certainly do that. If there's certain elements that you feel like leaving out, like if the leaves are just a little bit too much, or you just rather not deal with that, you can totally do that. Or if you wanted to add some more, you can do that as well. So hopefully you enjoyed our thankful autumn for our adult tiny art for adults and teens.